to Brian's Beat. Join the show by calling 508-996-0500. New Bedford's news talk station, 1420 WBSM.
To a Brian's Beat. Good morning. The beginning of July. We are definitely getting into the dog days of summer. And it is going to be humid out today, so plan accordingly. And you know, they always say it, but it's very, very true. Hydrate yourself. Definitely hydrate yourself. I was reading, I think it was on my Facebook the other day when something came across my feed. I'm in a group known as Massachusetts Informed Parents because they deal with a lot of things going on within the schools. And I contribute every once in a while. And I read a lot of the different things that are going on from North Adams all the way down to P-Town. This came across, I believe, on Wednesday. Comprehensive Health and Physical Education Frameworks. Massachusetts Governor Maura Healey's administration wants third graders to learn that they can change their gender. But teaching gender ideology to students as young as 8 years old is just one of the many concerning learning objectives included in the newly released draft of a proposed health education framework. The Healey-Driscoll administration is giving the big thumbs up. DESE Commissioner Jeffrey Riley, he worked on this. The framework is that it's a framework. It is not the curriculum per se, but what many school districts do, if they don't choose their own type of curriculum, most of the time they rely on what DESE, if you don't know who DESE is or what DESE is, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, what they have outlined in their frameworks. So the frameworks right now are just a thought process. They're out now for a public comment period of just under 60 days now. And then it comes back, and then DESE, whether people object vehemently or not, DESE probably will give it the thumbs up. If that's not problematic enough, what could also happen is that the legislature signs on the dotted line, and then it becomes etched into Massachusetts law. Some of the things here are not only graphic, they, as Governor Healey, as DESE will come out and tell you, this stuff is age appropriate. I contend some families would turn around and tell you, not for my preschooler, not for my third grader, not for my fifth grader. So this is what we're looking at. And so I was reading on and on about it. And this is what I found. Students in grades preschool to 2 will discuss their genitalia. When we were that age, sitting in the bathtub with somebody of the opposite sex, we didn't talk about genitalia in the bathtub. You may have noticed something, but it was never discussed. But I guess Desi believes it's all right to tell preschoolers about this. Students in grades 3 and 5 will learn that they can change gender. Students in grades 6 through 8 will analyze their readiness for sexual activity. Is this what you are sending kids to school for? To analyze their readiness for sexual activity? Here's another one. Students in grades 9 through 12 will consider the benefits of sexual behavior. Huh? They're going to consider the benefits. I would ask the question, okay, you're talking about the pros. What about the cons? You're going to talk about the benefits, but there are no repercussions? What, aren't there enough little kids getting pregnant right now? Aren't there enough little kids coming down with disease? You need more? I know. I'm getting beside myself. Me talking. I certainly want to hear from you. 508-996-0500. Mary Ellen Seigler with Massachusetts Informed Parents when we come back. We're going to be spending this hour talking about the updated comprehensive health and physical education frameworks for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I got to tell you, I'm not the brightest light bulb in the pack, but I can look here and tell you the glass is just about shattered. Some of the things that I have been reading, some of the things that the state, want to be teaching to kids as young as, well, what's preschool? Isn't that age 2, age 3, age 4? Let's find out a little bit more. The person who led me to the Comprehensive Health and Physical Education Frameworks update is Mary Ellen Seigler. She is the founder of Massachusetts Informed Parents. Glad to have her on the show today. Mary Ellen, good morning.
Good morning, Brian.
Glad to have you with us today.
Well, it's good to be here with you. Thank you so much for having me.
No problem at all. I have been reading what you sent out the other day, and I'm not easily disturbed. I'm easily perturbed. But this is both disturbing and perturbing, if there is such a word. This whole framework. What is it really all about?
Yes, you described it accurately. It is very disturbing. So this framework has been in the works for since 2019. The draft that you see now that was just published last week, it has been getting revised over the last several years by a panel of people. And so it was just released by the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. And so these frameworks include learning objectives and standards for health education, including sex education in Massachusetts. And some of what they want to teach, even the youngest of children, is really shocking.
Yeah, I wonder how many parents, I don't mean board member parents, but parents were actually sitting down there when these guidelines, frameworks came out and said, yeah, okay, I'm down with this.
Right. Well, it really makes you wonder, because I think even as I was watching video and testimony at the board meeting of the Mass Department of Ed last week, and I see, the board listening to the testimony of some of the content that's in the framework. And then, as they were wrapping up that portion of the meeting, they were lauding the people who had worked on the framework and put all of this together. And, a lot of middle-aged people there who I'm sure have children of their own, and it really makes you scratch your head.
Well, Governor Healy seems to be all for it. The press release from her office, as a proud daughter of a school nurse and health sex education teacher, I believe strongly that all students deserve inclusive, medically accurate, and age-appropriate health guidelines. I have to say this. When I read that students in 3rd through 5th grade will learn that they can change their gender, how appropriate is that for school?
Well, not only, how appropriate is that, but that's not even medically accurate. It's not possible to change your gender. So, there's just so many red flags all over this framework. And, even for the youngest of children, LGBTQ identities, there's that T again, and family structures are going to be discussed. And small children are going to discuss their genitalia. And, students in grades 3 through 5 will talk about sexual intercourse and services related to human sexual reproductive anatomy. That's how they phrase it. Now, of course, we know that's abortion and treatment.
Actually, I didn't, but I'm glad that you told me that.
Right.
Yeah.
And then, they'll also talk about outside and potentially harmful resources for information on these topics. Well, when you see references, that means that there could be a discussion about pornography, because pornography is mentioned in comprehensive sexuality education curricula. And they usually will mention it in a way that teaches the students, we want you to know, pornography is out there. You've probably come across it, and it does not give you an accurate portrayal of what is realistically sexual activity for the average person. So they mention it in the course of mentioning it. They introduce it to the kids, and they also normalize it. And so, but they say that they will mention it so to warn kids that, don't use pornography as sex education because it's not accurate.
Well, a lot of the stuff doesn't seem too accurate. Students in grades 9 through 12 will consider the benefits of sexual behavior. Now, I don't want to sound like a prude. I really don't. But I think I do know that there are benefits and there are also cons, pros and cons here. I don't see anything about they will consider any kind of ramifications of sexual behavior. That's a little disturbing too. No, it's a lot of disturbing.
It's a lot of disturbing. It really is, because again, it is presenting the idea of sexual activity for minors in the affirmative. So, and, presenting it to them that there could be benefits of sexual behavior. So, and we know that teen sexual behavior is always high risk activity, even with the use of contraceptive, because it has a higher failure rate. Contraceptives have a higher failure rate amongst the teen population. And for anybody who has raised their own kids, we understand why. Because they're, an adolescent's executive functioning is not fully developed until about age 25. So, and they are given to impulse. They are given to not being able to always make the best decision in situations, that are charged. And so, the benefits of sexual behavior for minors, it's really setting kids up for harm.
Mary Ellen Siegler is our guest. She is the founder of Massachusetts Informed Parents. So here we are. We have an idea, and we have noticed over the past decade that all kinds of different sex has been introduced into the schools, the government schools. What do you say to parents that are saying, enough's enough, but I really can't take my kid out of school? What do you say to them?
Right. Well, there are a lot of innovations happening in education right now, and I'm so happy to see them. So there are more and more options being created for parents who are in that situation. So the Massachusetts Family Institute has been working with churches across the state to develop what's called learning centers. So learning centers are kind of a homeschool hybrid, if you will. So parents remove their children from the public school and they register themselves as homeschoolers in the district. And then they choose the curriculum that they want to use for their child. Sometimes they can choose an online program or they can, choose other types of curricula programs. And then the Learning Center will usually meet at the church anywhere from 1 to 2 to 3 days a week, where there will be adults there facilitating students completing their homeschooling assignments, and then they will get together for things like science experiments or gym class or art class or the things that are done that, lend themselves to being in community with other students. And so it's really a wonderful resource for parents. It's growing across the state. And I encourage parents to reach out to Massachusetts Family Institute to learn more about those options. So that's one option. There are a lot of online homeschooling options as well. And then there are homeschooling groups in Massachusetts. So you could enroll your child in an online homeschooling program, curricula. There are many of them. And then you could join a local homeschooling group or co-op. And this is where they would do things, in the younger grades, like they celebrate holidays and have holiday parties together. And they do gym class, like I mentioned before, or they do field trips together. And so that is, that social piece and that community piece that it provides. So homeschooling has come quite a long way. It's becoming much more mainstream, and it's becoming more doable for parents.
Do you see, you're correct, it has become, and certainly the crisis called pandemic has really opened up the floodgates, and many people, for whatever the reason, pro-mask, against mask, people have just said enough's enough, and they've floated away from those schools. I heard you in the Mass Family Institute, they are a pretty strong religious group. Are there any of these learning centers for people that maybe aren't that big on religion, but they certainly want the benefits of the education?
Sure. There are some of these groups popping up, too, that don't have a religious affiliation. So you could search my group, Massachusetts Informed Parents. Some of those groups have been shared and posted in that Facebook group, in the Facebook group for Massachusetts Informed Parents.
In the meantime, we have, let's say, 53, 54 days for the public comment period. And I certainly hope that people will comment one way or the other about these frameworks. My guess is that the DESE board, or I should say the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education, is going to vote this in no matter what the public says.
Well, that's what we expect to happen, but we'll wait and see. But the public really does need to take advantage of this opportunity until the end of August to provide comments. And we've made it pretty easy for them to do so. So I worked with my colleagues at Massachusetts Family Institute, and we created an automatic email that people can send. You can use the talking points that we've put there in the email, or you can amend it and, use your own words to, share how you feel about the framework. If you text the word frameworks to 87891, frameworks to 87891. You will receive back information about the frameworks. You will receive a link to the frameworks themselves, an evaluation of the frameworks that I did, and then you'll also receive a link to the automated email that you can use.
In reality, or as close as you can be, how many of these emails, how many people have to come out to really make a difference here with the board that they say, well, there are just too many people against it? I think what really has to happen is that you have to have a mass exodus from the schools. And until that happens, there's not going to be, because the state has a monopoly.
Well, I mean, it's true. And, Worcester is such a good example. So I don't know if you know what happened in Worcester. In 2021, they voted to begin to teach a comprehensive sexuality education model of curriculum there. A curriculum put out by Advocates for Youth called Rights, Respect, and Responsibility. And it was, the program started in kindergarten. And some of the content in the lower grades was so upsetting. So the parents there, they showed up in mass. They were standing on the corners, passing out flyers at stoplights. I mean, the response of the parents in Worcester was incredible. They showed up to all of the school committee meetings where this was being discussed, and they were definitely in the majority, the parents who were against it. The school committee voted to implement the curriculum anyway. So what happened was the parents said, okay, we are going to start the largest opt-out movement this state has ever seen, and that's exactly what they did. Last year, over 4,000 students were opted out of sex ed class in Worcester. So, and this is happening all over the state, these opt-out movements. So it's happening in about over 50 municipalities. So it's growing, and it's only going to continue to grow. So that the opt-out movement is growing, and also the mass exodus from public schools are growing. And then I'm seeing innovations in education. I'm seeing teachers post on Massachusetts Informed Parents and say, I don't want to teach any of this stuff. I don't want any part of this. I want to get involved in teaching small groups of kids. Are there any homeschool co-ops that I can help out? So I just think, Brian, that you are going to see more and more of this as we move forward, because parents really have had enough.
I tend to agree with you, and I hope. I mean, I sit here and I kind of preach that gospel. I don't know how many people are really paying attention. Mary Ellen, will you take a call or two?
Sure.
508-996-0500 to get on to Brian's Beat today. Hello, you're on with our guest, Mary Ellen Siegler.
Good morning, Mary Ellen. It's the only concern I have is that's great news, but you know very well that our governor is very pro about what's going on with the sexuality, like in the classrooms. Now, if you look at Maryland, I don't know if you follow Maryland, so when this massive opt-out was happening in Maryland, they changed the rules and said, your son and daughter can no longer opt out. And I don't know if you've seen, there's been almost like riots. I mean, people fist fighting and everything. It's been ugly there in Maryland. So when people started opting out in mass droves, they said, no, your son and child cannot opt out. That's my concern. But what I have to tell you, Mary Ellen, I think the card that you have, our Supreme Court yesterday, a justified verdict, meaning that your religion trumps anyone. They cannot force their beliefs onto your religion. So maybe that'll be the card in the hole that you can use. Because I have a funny feeling that that our governor is going to see this mass exodus, and they're going to mandate it. I think that's coming next.
All right. Thank you for your call, Mary Ellen.
Well, so I think, we definitely always have to keep an eye on what's happening at the State House. There is what's called the Healthy Use Act right now that I call the sex ed mandate. That is a pending piece of legislation. What that would do is it would, for any school districts that choose to teach sex ed, it would mandate this health curriculum framework that we're discussing. So, for instance, if a school chooses to teach sex ed, they can still choose not to teach it, but most of them do teach it. So if they do choose to teach it, their curriculum choice will have to be in line with the standards that are in this framework. Now, fortunately, in that bill, the opt-out, the opt-out provision still remains for parents. So
the governor really couldn't override that.
So that hasn't, the opt-out is in our current sex ed law right now. And in this Healthy Youth Act that is pending at the State House, the opt-out still exists in that pending legislation. But, as these things usually go, the strategy can sometimes be, let's not do too much too soon. It's usually an incremental, so if they can at first get the framework mandated, I would say that's the first step. And then, your caller makes a great observation. I think it's a legitimate concern that the opt-out could be taken away. But, there's also some pending legislation right now that would make, instead of having an opt-out related to sex education, we would have an opt-in. So what that means is if a student is going to take sex ed, they can only be in the class if their parent has signed a permission slip. So, that would be much better than an opt-out.
I would agree.
So, I'll definitely keep everybody informed about that in the Massachusetts Informed Parents group as I learn more about it.
Let us continue. Good morning. You're on with Mary Ellen.
Good morning, Brian. Just a quick question. I don't have time to stay on the line with you, but I just wanted to tell you, great show. Question that I do have is, what can we as a school committee do to help parents get their word heard other than attending school committee meetings? What can we do to help this foolishness cease and desist at this point?
Mary Ellen, this is Chris Cotter. He is a member of the New Bedford School Committee, has been there for several years, and he has watched this whole thing spiral and has commented plenty of times on it.
Well, so first of all, school districts are not required to teach sex ed. So they can choose not to teach it. And if they choose to teach it right now, as it stands in Massachusetts, they can choose any approach that they would like to teach it. So they could teach a healthier approach, such as sexual risk avoidance education, which presents abstinence and delayed sexual debut as an optimum public health model for youth. So, you can make better curriculum choices. So those things are within your power. Many school districts will, as parents go to address issues in their school districts and they get in touch with me and they say that they're told all the time by their school committee, we have, no choice in the matter. This is all coming down from DESE. Well, DESE doesn't create law. So you can, they create guidance and they create guidelines for school districts to take advantage of. So there's still local control, and we really need to fight to maintain that.
Chris, let me just ask you, if the if the school committee was going to sit down and vote on something like this, do you have enough votes within your own body in order to override these kind of guidelines?
To be honest with you, Brian, I'm not sure we would, which is a little concerning on my end. But again, I think the more that we get people to understand that, again, we as a district should stay out of that particular issue. There's nothing wrong with teaching health and have a small piece of sex education in as it was years ago. There's nothing wrong with keeping that. But to, have DESE dictate and direct this curriculum from such a young age, to me, is incredible.
Well, you don't want preschoolers discussing genitalia with each other?
Well, unfortunately, no. I mean, that's in the old days that would be called experimentation. But again, no, I don't.
I got you. Hey, I know you're busy. Thanks for the call.
All right, Brian.
I do appreciate it. 508-996-0500. Hello, you're on with Mary Ellen.
Hello. I'm a retired elementary school teacher, and I'm getting to be ashamed of saying I taught in the public schools. I cannot believe what I'm hearing. Now, how will you be able to tell if a child is abused at home when they got all this information where the parent can say, they learned that at school? That's not happening. I think the children are not being protected with all of this ridiculousness. Half of the things I don't even know. I was an innocent teacher myself. I taught clear and wholesome things. This is a bunch of garbage, and it's perverted.
Thank you, Mary Ellen.
Well, I couldn't agree with her more. And she's absolutely right. What this is doing, when you start discussing sexual matters and just having children discuss their genitalia, that is grooming behavior. So what that does is it lowers the child's natural inhibitions around these topics. And, engaging in these kinds of conversations with other people's children is completely inappropriate. I couldn't agree with her more.
So it begs the question, she brought up the sexual boundaries. What happens if something at school happens that is, I don't want to, it's some type of sexual assault? Could be male on female, female on male, they on though, who knows? But it happens at the school. Is the school ever guilty because they were spoon-feeding this type of curriculum?
Well, I mean, you raise a good question. I really think that we need to take a step back and have a broad view of what's happening here with these learning objectives that are, being rolled out here. What are the implications of this? We know that CSE programs in general are not meeting their objectives. So and I would like to point out that in this new framework, there is no measurable outcomes for even success. So, typically, if you're going to teach a program, you would have some kind of measurable markers that you were trying to achieve. So, for instance, delaying the initiation of sexual activity, or reducing teen pregnancy, or reducing teen abortions, or reducing the incidence of STIs. So, that's what you would, endeavor to do. But that's not what's happening with these programs. These programs have a very high failure rate. So they have about an 88% actually failure rate.
So how do we know that? Outcomes. How do we know that? If you can't measure success, how do we know we can measure failure, and what's that measured on?
Right. So there have been some studies done on CSE programs in the past. And so they have, that's where I was pulling that number from. And that's from an Erickson and Weed study on CSE programs. And so what I was saying is the framework. So some CSE programs do have some, measurable goals. Like they say that they want to delay teen sexual debut, and they want to reduce teen pregnancies or the instance of STIs. But this framework that was just published by DESE doesn't have any measurable outcomes for success in it. So, that's something important to know.
Have they ever?
In the past, I'd have to go back through the 1999 framework to see if they have any, measurable outcomes. But some CSE programs, yes, have had, they purport to delay sexual initiation and lower the incidence of STIs. Mm-hmm. But, another study showed that nearly 1 in 4 teens who participate in a CSE program, they actually end up feeling pressured to become sexually active. Because the sexual activity is presented in the affirmative. So, and this is not the kind of sex ed that parents want their children to have. Parents want children to learn about natural development, about the biology of reproduction, but but teaching your children values around this issue, which is a very personal issue, they don't want some teacher having that conversation with them, a teacher that they don't even know.
Well, I would say this to you, Ed, since you brought it up, and then we're going to go to a call. The system doesn't want the parents teaching this. In fact, there was somewhere where I read in these the comprehensive, I got to use the name, health and physical education frameworks, where the values of what's been taught at home could be in contradiction to what the school is teaching. And what is the kid supposed to do? We're having a test on this. Well, mom taught me this way or dad taught me this way, but the school is saying it's, you talk about confusion. That is what this is leading to. 508-996-0500. I do thank you for your patience. You're on with Mary Ellen Siegler. Hello.
Yes, hello. Good morning to both of you.
Good morning.
I've been listening to this for so long. This has been going on now where now you're saying they can mandate it. You can't opt out. They could do that. And then you mentioned this was all already in the works back in 2019. Is that what you said?
So the current, the draft of the updated health framework that was just released last week, the revision of that document started in 2019. Yeah.
Okay. This is what I would really like to know, because we're talking about all this, and to me it's evil because the children are too young. What I would like to hear somebody say is the names. I want names of the people who are sitting in those chairs that make these decisions from the beginning. Like, who came up with this idea to be telling children they can change their gender? Somebody started it all. Somebody had that idea, and I know it's more than one person. I want names so I can write letters. I want to be able to go to other meetings besides school meetings. When those people are making decisions like that, and now they have the right to go against parents, it's wrong. I want to know names. Can you give me names?
Mary Ellen, thank you for your call.
Thank you.
There is a document on the Department of Education's website, and Brian, I can send that to you later, that lists all of the people who were on the panel who drafted these frameworks. I will tell you, one of the groups that helped with this draft is Planned Parenthood.
Oh, they've been at this stuff for a long time. I mean,
right.
They benefit. They do benefit because eventually, if somebody needs some type of services, they tend to go to the Planned Parenthood or the exact opposite of Planned Parenthood. But Planned Parenthood does reap a benefit from putting out these pamphlets and whatnot.
Well, yes, they do actually benefit from kids getting this kind of sex education program.
Are there any regular parents on these kind of panels or putting these frameworks together, or is this all the stakeholders getting together and putting it out?
It's mostly stakeholders. It's people from, if you look at the names on the panel, it's various people from school districts, health teachers, superintendent, representatives from different groups like Planned Parenthood. I believe there may have been one parent. I think the panel had just about 50 members on it. It might have been just shy of 50 people. So, but by and large, parents are kept out of this. Parents are kept out of these kinds of things. So Mary Ellen, if people want to get a hold of you to follow up on some of the stuff and maybe participate in, which I believe there'll be some rallies and some speak outs and some protests and some sit-ins and those kind of things, how do they get a hold of you? Well, one, they should go to Massachusetts Informed Parents on Facebook, and they should start following the group, join the group. They can email me at massinformedparents@gmail.com. That's massinformedparents@gmail.com. They can also go to the Massachusetts Informed Parents Substack site, and a link to that should be available right at the top of the group, in the Facebook group in Massachusetts Informed Parents. They can sign up, subscribe to our Substack site, and we send out a weekly digest of everything that we've published in the Facebook group, and sometimes we have additional articles that we publish there, and it goes right to your inbox. And then additionally, if people want more information about the framework that we've been discussing, they can text the word frameworks to 87891.
Wow. You guys got a lot going on. The best would be just to go to Massachusetts Informed Parents on Facebook, because that'd be the quick in. Is there a website?
There's not a website for Massachusetts Informed Parents, but Massachusetts Informed Parents is linked on the website for Massachusetts Family Institute, mafamily.org. They can go to the resources section on the mafamily.org website and go to the Sex Ed in Massachusetts page. On that page, MFI has put together a sex ed map, we've collected public records requests on sex ed information from school districts all over the state, and we've written reports as we get information back from the school districts. We write reports, and then we put it there on that map. So, and that's an ongoing project. So parents can also look at that map to see if their school district has been evaluated yet.
Mary Ellen, we'll take one more call real quickly, and then I'll let you wrap it up for the hour. Hello, you're on with Mary Ellen.
Yeah, good morning, Brian. Good morning, Mary Ellen. Massachusetts is a copycat of California. Whatever California does, Massachusetts implements. I'm not sure if you're familiar with in California, in the State House in Sacramento, there's 10 to 12 bills in front of their State House regarding the schools as well. If there's children in the schools that want to have readjustment surgery, or they associate as something other their birth sex, and the parents are not in agreement, they want to pass legislation that they can take their children away from the parents, and it would be in the custody of the state of California. I'm wondering if you heard about this.
Yes, I have heard about it, and alarmingly, we have a commission right here in Massachusetts, the Massachusetts Commission for LGBTQ Youth, who just published their annual fiscal report just a couple of months ago. We've been pouring through it and evaluating that, and we'll be putting something out about it there. But in that report, they are making recommendations to legislators to pass legislation that would deem it child abuse if a parent does not affirm their minor child's transgender identity.
Yes, I heard about that too, and it's absolutely shocking. I believe up in Washington State there is a similar bill that is going on. Mary Ellen, real quick, any final words?
Well, so I just think that it's really time for parents to become equipped and to feel empowered to take charge of their child's education. I encourage people to start opt-out movements in their school districts. They can reach out to me for more information. Certainly, it would be wonderful if more parents would run for school committee and help out individuals like Mr. Cotter, who just called in. So, let's take back our school committees so we can have some common sense policies and standards returned to our school districts. We have to engage. Now's not the time to, withdraw. I think it's a good idea if you want to take your child out, if you're able to do that, you should do that. But for those who can't do it, they have to engage. And so that's where Massachusetts Informed Parents is here to help parents, to support parents, to give them the tools and the equipping and the information that they need so they can be effective advocates where they live.
Mary Ellen Siegler, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you so much for having me. And happy 4th.
Happy 4th to you, or Independence Day, depending on how you like to look at it. Mary Ellen is the founder of Massachusetts Informed Parents, and her email is massinformedparents@gmail.com. If you are a teacher in Acushnet, Dartmouth, Fairhaven, Freetown, Marion, Mattapoisett, Rochester, Wareham, Westport, after listening to this hour of programming, what's your thought process on either you or one of your new colleagues teaching this type of sex education? It has to chill you to the bone. Now think of it a different way. Instead of you teaching it, your kid sitting in that classroom